Alright guys, so our last tab in the Preferences dialog is the Interface tab. And in the Interface tab, we're kind of going to affect some of the looks as well as some of the cool features in Lightroom and how it functions. It's really kind of more of the fun preferences that we have available to us. Alright, so the first thing is in this Panels box is the end marks. Now, what are the end marks? The end marks are these little graphics right here that you see at the end of the panels. And you can't see it on the right side, but it is there. If I just shrink these panels, let me scroll up. Actually, I'm going to switch back to library. It might be easier. There we go. Okay. So when these are fully shrunk, you can see that they're at the end of them, there's a little graphical flourish right there. So when I go back here to Preferences, I can actually change that flourish to be whatever I want. A small flourish, a box, a leaf, an atom. I actually kind of like the leaf. You can also just keep in mind that you can set your own end marks by just going to the panel end mark folder and loading in your own end marks. Alright, but I'm going to leave it as a leaf. That's cool. I like it. And then the next option here for the panels is the font size. And what we're talking about here is basically the font size of these inside options here in the panels. So let's say I open the Quick Develop, the keywording, and kind of see this font size right here. Right now it looks like it's currently set to small. So if I go into my preferences, right now it's on automatic, which is default, so it'll pick one either small or large, and currently it's set to small. So if I hit large, it's going to say, note, font changes take effect upon restarting Lightroom. So if I hit OK, close Lightroom, and reopen it, we should see our fonts got quite a bit larger over here, and they did. So that's just kind of a preference. If you feel like it's easier to read them, whether they're larger, you set them to large. If not, you can leave it where it's at. I do like the automatic small, so I'm just going to leave it there. Our next option is Lights Out. And what is Lights Out? Well, I'm going to exit this Preferences dialog once again. And either from the library or the Develop module, if you click the L button, so, okay, here we go, L button, it's going to go to Lights Out mode. Now, when you hit L once, it goes to Lights Out, the first mode. When you hit L twice, it goes to fully Lights Out. When you hit L again, lights come back on. Okay, so the settings that we have right here basically determine how Lights Out functions. So when you click L the first time, Lights Out's going to go to one of these colors. Now black is the default, but let's say I set it to dark gray. And it's going to set the dim level. So again, this is the first click. Because the second click, it's going to go to fully dark gray. So I'm going to say 50%. Hit OK. Now when I hit L, it goes to 50% dark gray. And when I hit L again, it goes to fully dark gray. And L again brings my lights back on. I do prefer black over anything else, and I just like the way it's set to default. So I'm going to leave it right there. But what is Lights Out useful for? Basically, if you are bringing in clients in your studio or wherever you are and you're showing them images straight in Lightroom, it's really nice to have Lights Out because there's so much text and so much functionality and stuff that's going on all around your image. Look at all this. Like we have our film strip, we have our modules over here, our panels on the left, all this text. When I click Lights Out, it just kind of allows whoever's browsing these to focus strictly on the image. If I click it again, once again, even more focus on the images, everything goes pitch black. And I can still use my scrolling functions with the left and right arrows. Lightroom is actually still fully functional right now. It's just we don't see anything other than the image. Okay, so I'm going to go lights back on. Go back into my preferences. Alright guys, so this next section is the background options, and what we're talking about is the background of this main window right here. So you see this kind of light, well it's like a medium gray, that's what it says here. If I change that, I can change it to whatever color I want. Now medium gray works for me. I also like dark gray just because it kind of matches all the other panels and it's kind of darker, it brings a little more focus in the image. I feel like black and the whites, especially white, is really contrasty, kind of harsh to look at, and I don't want to go blind soon, so I'm going to set it to dark gray and leave it there. This texture is going to affect the texture that's over that dark gray background. Now, I don't like any textures at all because, again, it's drawing my attention away from the image and more onto the texture. I like to keep everything plain, just focus on the image. Now, for the main window, that's our option here. For the secondary window, what is that? Well, if you are using, say, dual monitors, you can click down here and you can run a second monitor. And you can set that second monitor to, say, show the thumbnails of the images or whatever you want. Because I'm only recording one side of my monitor right now, I'm not going to worry about showing you guys, but the options for the background on the secondary window are right here as well. Okay, so I'm going to set this to dark gray. It didn't quite take before because I hit cancel, so I'm going to do that again. Now, The next option we have is the keyword entry. And this is the option to separate keywords using commas or to separate them with spaces. Now, I don't like separating them with spaces because Lightroom actually allows you to use spaces in your keywords. Like if I select commas, it says spaces are allowed in keywords. What does this allow me to do? Well, I can go to this image right here, and I'm going to have to switch back to my library module because that's where you do keywording. And we will cover keywording in more detail later, so don't worry too much about that. But I can set this to, let's say, Paul and Sheila portraits. Okay. Now that is a valid keyword. It is one keyword, and if I add a comma, now that becomes its own, and I can say a second keyword. So I can say just portraits. Now, obviously, if I were really creating keywords, I would make them a little bit more useful than what I'm doing right now. But that's just to give you an idea. If I don't, if I have that, go back here. Whoops, sorry. If I go back here and I separate using spaces, then every one of these, starting here, like if I go and click this again, I say December portraits. Well, now both of those are their own keywords, and you can see how it's separated them with a comma now because it becomes its own keyword. So I do like to leave that as default and just have it separate keywords using commas. And then the autocomplete text in the keyword tag field, basically what that means is just when you go over to this keyword tag field, if I'm entering in something that's already entered, so I'm typing in HDR and I've already typed in HDR once on a previous keyword, it's going to autofill it. So I do like having that available too. It just makes typing in keywords a little bit faster. If you are annoyed with the autocomplete, then you can click here and uncheck it. Alright, so our next set of options is in the film strip. Now what is the film strip exactly? I'm going to close this, I'm going to show you, it's this area right here on the bottom. That is our film strip that I'm scrolling back and forth on. So the options that we're going to affect here are going to affect how the film strip functions and what kind of options we'll see available there. I do like to default everything on just because I like to see more than less. But here's what we got. We got show ratings and pics, which is going to show basically the flags as well as stars of each of these items on the film strip. I like to have that on. So you can see right here I flagged these. If I click off, it doesn't show the flags. I haven't set star ratings to these, but if I did, like if I set this to 4 stars, it's also going to show it right there. Okay, and if I click off again, the stars go away. So I like to keep my ratings and pics. Showing badges are these little icons that you see on the right side. Okay, if I click off, all the badges can disappear. Showing our stack counts, let me just move this window a tiny bit. Now, what Lightroom allows you to do is if you have several copies of the same image but are different effects, it allows you to stack them up. And it'll give you a stack count, which is what you see me pointing at right here. So that means that there are 3 versions of this image. If I click here, it'll remove the stack counts. So again, this is something I like to see because I want to see if I have multiple versions of one image. This show photos in Navigator on mouse over is basically this. I'm going to close this out and open my Navigator window. When I actually mouse over another image, it'll change that image to whatever I'm mousing over in the Navigator window. Okay, I like that feature just because it kind of allows me to have a quick preview without clicking there. You can also disable it. When I have my film strip as large as it is right now, there's not that big of a difference between seeing it here versus seeing it here on the Navigator. So, you know, in this kind of situation, it might be useful to disable it. But again, there's not really any point to disable it. It doesn't really benefit you. So the next item is Show Photo Info Tooltips. What this is if I mouse over on any one of these and I leave my mouse there, you're going to see this little tooltip that appears that shows me the name of the file, the date, the time, and the resolution. That's the tooltip. So if I click on Preferences and I disable that, it's going to remove that info. So when I mouse over, nothing's going to pop up. That's up to you if you want to keep it there. Again, it's kind of just a matter of what you like better in your preferences. I'm going to keep it on. Okay, so the tweaks are really cool. Well, at least this first one is really cool. It's very useful. This zoom, click, point to center basically means this. I'm going to close this out and show you something. Now, when I close this out, if I click his nose to zoom in, you'll notice that I clicked on it, but it doesn't actually bring it to the center. It just zooms in on that area. So his nose is actually in the top of my frame. If I wanted that to be, if I want where my clicked area to be the center of wherever I'm zooming to, then I just go back to my preferences and I click that option, zoom, click, point to center, and I hit OK. Now when I click here again, it brings it right to the center of my screen. Okay. Now this is up to you how your workflow works. If If you feel like it's more advantageous to click and then just start editing, then you probably don't want to do the zoom point to center, because it's going to make you move your mouse back to the center to start editing. But if you like things to be in the center for viewing purposes, then you do want to click it. I'm kind of cool with either way. I do like to zoom right in and start editing without moving my mouse again, so I leave it as off. But it's a cool feature to have. The next one, use system preferences for font smoothing. It's just simply going to basically use the system preferences over Lightroom preferences for smoothing out these fonts in Lightroom. Does that make a huge difference? Not really. It's one of those things, again, you're going to have to restart Lightroom to see the changes, and really the changes aren't that noticeable anyway. So I'm going to hit OK and not worry about that. Alright guys, great job on this. We're done with the preferences. Let's move on to the next section.